You have power over your mind, not outside events. This truth stands like a lighthouse amidst the crashing waves of life. It is a guiding principle carved deep into the philosophy of Stoicism and echoed through the writings of Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor who ruled not only with a sword but with wisdom. This simple sentence has the strength to transform anxiety into peace, helplessness into clarity, and fear into courage. We live in a world where much is outside our control: the weather, the economy, the actions of others, the unpredictable twists of fate that seem to appear from nowhere and alter our paths. And yet, despite all these variables, one thing remains constantly and solely within our power: our mind. Our thoughts, our choices, our perspective. Every day, people wake up and hand over their peace to the news, to other people's moods, to likes on a screen, to setbacks and interruptions. We make ourselves prisoners of things we cannot control, and then we wonder why we feel so trapped. Marcus Aurelius understood this over 2,000 years ago. He ruled over vast lands, yet his real mastery was internal. He wrote not to impress, but to remind himself, again and again, that the only true battlefield was the mind. That the only thing we own, truly and completely, is our response. Circumstances can change, people can disappoint us, dreams can delay, but still, the way we interpret and respond to these things is a choice no one can take from us unless we give it away. A man can be stripped of his possessions and still keep his peace. A woman can lose everything and still choose to rise each day with grace. The Stoics were not detached from pain. They did not pretend suffering did not exist. They simply chose to confront it without illusion. They said, "This is happening, I cannot change that, but how I respond to it, that is mine, that is freedom." This is not about suppressing emotion, it is about disciplining thought. It is not about denying difficulty, it is about denying difficulty the power to rule you. You may not be able to stop the rain, but you can decide whether to curse the storm or dance in it. You may not control what someone says to you, but you always decide what you will allow to live rent-free in your mind. The mind, left undisciplined, is a chaotic and reactive force. It fears the future, obsesses over the past, and panics in the present. But when trained, when directed, it becomes a fortress. The Stoic does not chase control of the external. He builds internal strength to endure the external. There is deep power in that. To stand tall not because the winds are calm, but because you have anchored yourself so deeply that no wind can uproot you. Most people live on emotional autopilot. Someone cuts them off in traffic, they explode. A comment on social media, they crumble. A delay in plans, they spiral. But what if you could pause before reacting? What if you could learn to observe without absorbing? What if you could train your mind, moment by moment, to return to what is in your power? Imagine the strength that comes from realizing that peace is not found when everything goes right. Peace is found when you stop depending on external circumstances to define your inner state. People may hurt you, lie about you, misunderstand you. The Stoic says, "Let them, that is their choice. My peace is mine. The world may crumble and rise again. I remain." This is not indifference. It is inner independence. It is not coldness. It is clarity. When you stop demanding the world to be a certain way, you begin to see it more clearly. And in that clarity, you find your strength. There is a quiet dignity in choosing your response, not because you're passive, but because you're powerful, not because you don't care, but because you care about the right things. And the right things are never things that lie outside your control. You cannot control the past. You cannot control the weather. You cannot control what others think of you, but you can control your focus, your effort, your discipline, your gratitude. You can control the thoughts you feed and the stories you repeat to yourself, and that alone is enough to change your life from the inside out. We are often taught to chase achievement, success, validation. But the Stoic chases something else: mastery of the self, self-command, serenity under fire, stillness in chaos. That is a success no one can take from you. You don't have to fix everything, you just have to fix your lens. You don't have to win every battle, you just have to win the battle inside. You don't have to control outcomes. You just have to control your effort and your attitude. From that effort, all true progress flows. The world is loud, constantly telling you what to fear, what to want, what to believe. But the Stoic becomes still enough to hear the quiet voice within, the voice that says, "You are not what happens to you. You are what you choose to become in response to it." That is where all power lies. Not in outcomes, not in applause, not in the approval of others, but in presence, in perspective, in practice, and the practice is simple. Ask in every moment, "Is this within my control?" If yes, take full responsibility. If no, release it. You will be tested, again and again. People will provoke you. Life will frustrate you. Outcomes will elude you. The mind will wander. But the Stoic returns to the path, not once, but daily. Every moment is a chance to reclaim your power. Every irritation is an invitation to grow. Every challenge is a mirror reflecting how far you've come and how far you can still go. True freedom is not found in changing the world, but in changing the way you experience it. True power is not about force, but about focus. You become unshakable not by controlling every wave, but by learning to stand firm no matter how high the tide rises. You have power over your mind. That is the root of all freedom. That is the secret of all strength. That is the gateway to a life not dependent on chance or favor, but grounded in unchanging principles. The world may never be calm, but you can be. You may not predict the winds, but you can always adjust your sails. You may not choose the events, but you can always choose your mindset. You may not control how others act, but you can always govern your own thoughts. You may not change what happens around you, but you can always choose how to interpret and respond within you. The world outside is wild, unpredictable, full of storms that come without warning and waves that rise higher than anyone expects. Life has a way of showing you that no matter how much you plan, how much you prepare, how much you hope, things will happen that are completely outside your control. People will disappoint you, opportunities will vanish. Relationships will break, health will decline. The truth is, you can live an honest, disciplined, generous life and still face setbacks that leave you breathless. But there's one thing, one sacred thing, that the chaos of the outside world can never touch: your mind. Your thoughts, your inner world, the seat of your perceptions and the choices you make in response to what happens to you. This idea was not born yesterday. It is not some modern theory built in the comfort of a lecture hall. It comes from those who endured wars, exile, illness, betrayal, and loss, from those who faced the worst of what life could throw at a human being and still discovered a place of stillness within. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, knew power, but more importantly, he knew pain. He wrote not as a king, but as a student of life. In the solitude of his tent, surrounded by the weight of an empire and the burden of war, he penned words that would outlive kingdoms. You have power over your mind, not outside events. It seems simple, maybe too simple, but simplicity is where the truth often hides. You cannot control the weather, but you can control how you prepare for the storm. You cannot control whether someone loves you back, but you can control how you show up in love. You cannot control whether your plan succeeds, but you can control the energy, the patience, and the commitment you bring to the process. And in that space-in, that decision to own what is yours and release what is not, you become powerful. People waste their lives chasing the things they cannot command. They try to force outcomes, fix people, rewrite the past, or guarantee the future. They spend their days anxious, angry, bitter, disappointed, not because of what happened, but because they thought they had the right to make the world bend to their will. The Stoic doesn't live like that. The Stoic lives with eyes wide open, a heart trained to let go, and a mind built like a fortress. The Stoic says, "This is not in my control. Let it be. This is mine. Let me shape it." That's not weakness. That's wisdom. That's strength at its highest form. It takes courage to surrender. It takes discipline to detach. It takes daily practice to master the mind, because the mind is a wild horse, always running toward fear, regret, desire, anger. But you don't have to ride wherever it runs. You can grab the reins. You can say, "Not today." You can learn to sit in discomfort without reacting, to hear criticism without crumbling, to face loss without collapsing. Because you have learned that while life may shake your circumstances, it cannot touch your will unless you hand it over. Every day brings 1,000 chances to forget this. A rude comment that stings more than it should. A delay that ruins your plans, a rejection that bruises your ego, a fear that creeps in when you're trying to sleep. But the Stoic trains for this, not by avoiding pain, but by rehearsing clarity, by waking up and saying, "I will encounter people today who are rude, selfish, and ignorant. That is part of life. My peace is not based on their behavior. It is based on my values, my vision, my decision to stay rooted no matter what wind blows through the streets." The modern world encourages reaction. Everything is fast, urgent, dramatic. But the Stoic is slow to speak, slow to judge, slow to lose his center, because he knows that rushing is the enemy of clarity. He knows that emotions, left unchecked, become storms that flood the mind and wash away reason. And he doesn't suppress emotions. He understands them, he observes them, he watches them rise and fall like waves without attaching his identity to any of them. And this practice, this quiet resistance to being ruled by fleeting feelings, becomes his superpower. When others panic, he breathes. When others rage, he listens. When others cling, he releases. When others blame, he reflects, because he knows that his mind is the only kingdom where he is sovereign. He will not be a slave to external noise. He will not let random events hijack his mood. He will not let the behavior of others dictate the meaning of his life. That kind of discipline creates an inner atmosphere where peace is not an accident, but a practice, not a feeling, but a choice. You are not your circumstances. You are your response. You are not what happened to you. You are what you do with what happened. You are not defined by who abandoned you, hurt you, or doubted you. You are defined by how you grew, how you rose, how you refused to let it poison your spirit. That is the Stoic path, not a life without hardship, but a life where hardship meets unshakable presence. Not a life without emotion, but a life where emotion serves wisdom. Not the other way around. There will be days when the mind rebels, when it screams to control the uncontrollable, when it aches for fairness, when it cries for comfort. And on those days, more than ever, you must return to what you know, that you can always choose your focus, you can always return to the breath, you can always find something to be grateful for, you can always pause before reacting. You can always ask what's in my power right now, and no matter how small the answer may seem, that small act of self-come, and is how you reclaim your strength. Over and over again we live in times of noise, of distractions dressed as desires, of endless opinions and shallow urgencies. But none of them can reach you if you don't let them in. Your peace is your responsibility. Your mindset is your masterpiece. Your mind is your sacred territory. And when you protect it, when you train it, when you learn to sit with discomfort without being ruled by it, you become a warrior in a world of reactors, a calm presence in a sea of chaos, a thinker in a time of blind impulses. Marcus Aurelius didn't just write these ideas to sound wise. He wrote them because he needed them. He suffered, he lost children, he fought wars, he faced betrayal and sickness and grief, and still he returned to the page again and again to remind himself, you have power over your mind. Not outside events. Realize this, practice this, live this, because everything else is unstable, temporary, and beyond your grasp, but your mind, that is yours. That is the one domain where your freedom begins and ends. You wake up each day with a choice, and that choice is the foundation of your freedom. You can decide to be ruled by events you can't control, or to master the one thing that is always within your reach, your mind. This is not just philosophical poetry. This is the practical, grounded reality of Stoicism. It is the quiet power Marcus Aurelius understood as he ruled the Roman Empire and fought battles not only on the field but also within himself. He knew that while the throne could be threatened, while friends could turn into enemies, and while storms could crush ships, the mind remained untouched unless you handed it over, and that truth hasn't changed. The storms may look different today, but they come just the same. Bills, deadlines, betrayal, illness, uncertainty. Life still throws things at you that you didn't ask for and cannot stop. And in those moments, it becomes clear what Stoicism means when it tells you that you do not control what happens, but you always control how you interpret it. You have been taught to believe that if you can fix everything around you, then you will find peace. If you can change people, prevent failure, eliminate uncertainty, and force outcomes, then you'll finally be safe. But Stoicism turns this on its head. It says, stop trying to control the wind and learn how to adjust your sails. Stop trying to command the ocean and learn how to remain steady in your boat, because power is not about bending the world to your will. Power is about being unshaken by the world's chaos. And you can only do that when you understand what is yours to govern and what is not. Every minute you spend worrying about what others think, you give them authority over your mind. Every second you spend replaying a past mistake, you trap yourself in something that no longer exists. Every time you expect the world to be fair, people to be perfect, or life to go according to your script, you set yourself up for frustration. The Stoic sees all of this and chooses a different response. The Stoic accepts the world as it is, not as it should be. The Stoic wakes up and says, I don't know what today will bring. I don't know who will disappoint me or what challenge I will face. But I know I can face it with a calm mind and a steady hand. It takes strength to admit what you can't control. Weakness clings to false certainty. Weakness insists that life must go according to plan. Strength says, let the plan break, I will still build. Let the door close, I will still walk. Let the world move, I will still stand. Marcus Aurelius wrote not to lecture the world, but to remind himself, over and over again, of what he could control, his thoughts, his actions, his choices. And in doing so, he left behind a timeless manual for those who would dare to do the same. You see, life doesn't ask your permission before throwing you into discomfort. It doesn't warn you before it takes something away. But Stoicism doesn't require warnings. It trains you to prepare your mind before the storm arrives. It teaches you to build mental strength the way others build muscle, not by comfort, but by challenge, not by ease, but by endurance. And that strength is what makes you dangerous in the best way, not because you control the world, but because the world cannot control you. Imagine how your life would feel if your peace wasn't tied to circumstances, if you weren't emotionally enslaved to people's opinions, if your happiness didn't rise and fall with your bank balance or your relationship status. That isn't fantasy, that's the Stoic ideal. That's what you begin to cultivate when you understand that your mind is your domain and everything else is just weather. It will come, it will go, it will shift, but you remain, and this mindset is not passive. It is not surrender, it is the opposite. It is active discipline, it is presence. It is the art of choosing your perspective every moment of every day. When someone insults you, the Stoic asks, must you be offended? Or can you see their behavior as a reflection of them, not a reflection of you? When your plan fails, the Stoic asks, is this a loss, or is this a lesson that prepares you for something greater? When life says no, the Stoic asks, what yes is being prepared for me that I do not yet see? This shift from reaction to reflection, from control to clarity, is how you take your power back, not the power to dictate the universe, but the power to govern yourself. That's what freedom looks like, not freedom from discomfort, but freedom within it. Not a life without pain, but a mind that's no longer crushed by pain. That's the Stoic path, and it's not a theory, it's a practice. It's what you do when someone disappoints you, when the plan falls through. When your heart is heavy, It's the decision you make, in that exact moment, to come back to the one thing you always own, your inner response. Most people will never do this work. They'll blame the world. They'll complain. They'll try to escape reality through distraction, addiction, or denial. But the Stoic sees reality clearly and still stands. The Stoic looks pain in the eye and still breathes deeply. The Stoic accepts mortality, loss, and uncertainty, not because they are easy, but because they are real. And in that radical acceptance there is peace, there is clarity, there is the kind of calm that cannot be bought or borrowed, and that calm changes how you show up in the world. You become slower to anger, faster to forgive, quieter in your strength, louder in your presence. You begin to lead without needing a title, love without needing control, and live without needing guarantees. Because you're no longer moved by everything, you're moved by purpose. You're no longer chasing everything. You're grounded in principle. You're no longer anxious about what might happen. You're committed to what you can do with what does happen. The Stoic doesn't suppress emotion, but transforms it. Fear becomes fuel, pain becomes perspective, frustration becomes focus, and each day, through that alchemy of thought and choice, the Stoic becomes more centered. Not because the world gets easier, but because the mind gets stronger. And when your mind is strong, you stop wasting energy on what you can't control. You conserve your focus for what matters. You stop drowning in what if and start acting on what now. You stop arguing with reality and start flowing with wisdom. The voice of Stoicism is not loud, but it is clear. It whispers when life gets noisy. It reminds you that what happens is less important than how you see it. It invites you to stand in the storm, not because you're unshaken by nature, but because you've built something deeper than control, a philosophy, a practice, a way of being that can weather anything. There is a stillness that lives inside every human being, a place untouched by circumstances, free from the noise of the world, immune to the chaos that surrounds us. But most people never reach it because they're too busy reacting to things they cannot control, too distracted by the opinions of others, too consumed by outcomes, judgments, and comparisons. We live in a time where the outside world has become louder than our inner voice, where people chase happiness like it's a destination, instead of building peace like it's a discipline. And yet, despite the noise, despite the pressure, there are those who remember the ancient path. The Stoic path, the one that begins where the world ends. Inside the mind, Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, understood this truth better than most. Amid wars, betrayal, disease, and the weight of an empire, he returned again and again to one truth. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Not because life was easy for him, but because he realized that life doesn't have to be easy to be meaningful. He knew that suffering is part of the design, that pain is part of growth, that loss is a teacher, and that no matter how powerful you become, you are always a student of your own thinking. That is what Stoicism teaches. You don't need to master the world. You only need to master yourself. When you understand this, you stop trying to win battles that were never yours. You stop chasing control over the uncontrollable. You stop trying to change the weather and begin changing your clothing. You stop waiting for others to fix what only you can. There is freedom in that, because most of your stress doesn't come from what happens. It comes from your resistance to it. It comes from believing that things should be different than they are, that people should behave better, that life should unfold on your timeline. But Stoicism pulls you back into the present, and it reminds you that the only thing you ever truly own is your response, your reaction, your thoughts,